I would say for me, life growing up in New York, even though I didn't fully recognize it at the time, was very, very hard, right? It was basically like a 2.5 bedroom house with 13 of us lived in, so never enough food, never enough space, never enough anything. So that's my reality that I lived in back and forth for like the first 13 years of my life. I like to say, like I said, it was 13 of us living in a 2.5 bedroom apartment, and I shared a room with 4 of my uncles. Two of them was like totally immersed in the street life, even when crack came out. So I had like a bird's eye view, as they say, to what they was doing. They stashed guns in our room, they packaged drugs in our room. So it's not like I learned something outside of my own household. It's kind of like I learned it like right there. So he had the idea that we would start an all-family drug block. So it'd be 5 of us. And my job was basically to run the drugs from our house to the block, which was like 3 blocks away from where we lived. And that was like literally my introduction. I would get paid like I was like 11 or 12 then. So I got paid $100 a day. That was a lot. That was a lot back then in the 80s, you know what I'm saying? Just get $100 a day. And I was at a point where I didn't believe that I was gonna live. Like I'm like 16, 17, 15. I didn't believe I was gonna live to be 21. So I had a mentality like, whatever, if I die today, I die today. If I kill today, I kill today. When I was like 6 years old, or probably 5 years old, we had this bright idea that we would build a clubhouse. My grandfather was a mason, so he had like a bunch of building materials in the backyard. So we had that bright idea that we would make a clubhouse, and we brought all the materials that he had in the front and brought them to the front yard, and we like made like a little clubhouse. And when he came home, he wasn't like too pleased about it. So he ended up giving us all like a spanking and like a beating actually, and told us to go back to go put all the stuff back to where he got it from. And one of my uncles was still like very, very, he was smarting basically over the whipping. He didn't help put the stuff back. So what I did was I went and told my grandfather, like, listen, I'm doing all the work. Joe is not doing none of the work. And my grandfather got upset. He came outside, he gave him another whipping. So what happened when I went back to go do the work, my uncle actually hit me in the back of the head with a brick. He hit me in the back of the head with a brick. And I had to go to the hospital, I had to get stitches. And what came about of that, not only was that bad enough, when my mother came to the hospital, I remember my mother was asking like, what happened? So I explained to her what happened. And I explained to her like, yeah, Uncle Joe hit me in the head with a brick because I told Grandpa them. And she said literally to me, like, oh, that's why you don't tattle. She said, that's why you don't tattle. Like in my mind, it was like, wow, that hurt more than the brick. Because I expected her to like comfort me, whatever, but she was like, no, you shouldn't have tattled. And the reason I relate that story, because when I fast forward to November 2nd, 1990, I was in a situation where a man who's only 18, I was 17, I looked upon him as a person who had actually snitched. And he actually snitched to somebody who was my uncle. And in my mind, I'm like, yo, why is he still out here? Like, why didn't he? I thought it was a logical thing to actually like do something to him for being a tattle, if you will, just to harp back to what my mother told me. And the irrational mindset that I was back then, the traumatic mindset I was in back then, I thought it was the logical thing to do was to hit somebody in the head, in this case with a bullet, for snitching. So, yeah. I did most of my time in maximum security prison. In 2013, I went to what's called a community prison. It's the only one in the state. It's called MCI Norfolk. I would say early 2010 or 11, that prison had like an influx of younger men. Like usually there's an older population there, but it had an influx of younger incarcerated persons. And a lot of them were gang involved, right? So a riot happened, and in that riot between rival gangs, the youngest member there, who was 18 years old, he had to be meta-flighted out, he almost died. So a group of men that came together and had to find something to help us better communicate with each other, better resolve issues, be able to create spaces, and restorative justice was the tool that we actually came together to use. So I'll be honest with you, like when I was incarcerated, I did 28 years in prison. I did 22 years in maximum security, over a decade in segregation. And all of my activities that I did for those 2 decades that kept me incarcerated, kept me in segregation, was all rooted in things that happened to me from my childhood that I was still living out. That's what made me get fully invested in restorative justice and realize I had to unpack everything that happened to me as a kid. I was given a sheet called the risk factors that youth encounter that could cause them to transition to criminality. And when I was filling out that sheet, I realized I filled out every single one. I filled out every single one except for two. Having a parent die and being raped or sexually molested as a child. And I should have checked the sexual molestation or rape as a child, but I didn't have the courage to do it at that time. And then it was telling me that every one of these actions is something, it's, as they say, it's a thing that led to a thing that leads to a thing. Once I realized that, I was like, oh snaps, I got a lot of unpacking to do. I remember they sat me up, I was like, yo, they asked the question, who in this room is a victim? And I was like, I ain't no victim. And then when we started the process of our childhood and things that happened to, like, damn, I was a victim. Many things happened to me, you know what I'm saying? So, and the concept was that hurt people. Because I was so hurt, that's why I was able to hurt other people. But we also got the concept that heal people. Literally, like RJ created a safe space where you could go in and I could speak to, like, you know what? I was raped as a child. You know what? I was hit in the head. And I could cry and people could relate, people could affirm, and people could process me in a space where they had the same reality I had. Like I knew when I started doing that work that I would never be in a room again with 13 men, right, who actually all committed for the same crime as I was. So literally they had the same background I had, the same issues I had, and could understand everything I went through. Our work was so successful that a fundraising campaign happened, and our external work was led by somebody by the name of Dr. Karen Lachinsky, and she was the one who actually like started the process of causing a nonprofit to blossom from it. And that's how the Transformation of Prison Project came into existence. And the thing I loved about it the most, and what made me actually become involved in it, is that we sat at the table every day working with men inside and people outside to say how this was gonna shape up. And that in due time, when we come out, we was gonna be the ones that transition into leadership. There's 4 people on our staff now. 2 of whom were serving a life sentence. One was serving a life sentence for killing a cop. I was serving a life sentence for killing somebody that was 18 years old. And the other 2 men had hefty life sentences, so none of us was supposed to be out at this time. And we got out when we did get out, and we all transitioned into leadership successfully. So that was the mission, like to create something that could allow us to come out here and try to recreate what we did on the inside, internally, externally. And that was my motto always inside. Like if we could do it in there, we could do it out here. Like when I was inside, we started the Restorative Justice Group in collaboration with something. We started something called the Youthful Offender Group, which we actually administer restorative justice services to anybody that was convicted of a crime under the age of 18. Because we realized that demographic is different from the adult demographic that's incarcerated. They never lived a day of their life as an adult. Think about it, when I came home from prison, I never had a driver's license, I never paid the bill, I never was in an adult relationship, I never possessed the ID, none of that. I already know the hurdles of transitioning as a youthful offender. I want to create something where they could come in and they could actually have a place that knows their unique needs and be able to actually help them navigate them. And the goal is to change the narrative of the justice system. And that's one of the goals that we've been trying to do, like get totally and fully embedded in working with law students. And we do it with Northeastern School of Law, we do it with Harvard School of Law, and we do it with Columbia. I just want to replicate the success that we did inside, outside. I think it's possible.